So what's extraordinary about this law being passed in the UK? And yet we're being told that if we don't give the government new authorities immediately, without any debate, just taking their word for it, despite the fact that these exact same authorities were just declared unlawful by the European Court.
For over 2 years on the channel, we have been covering Encrochat. This was important because without knowing the evidence that the police suggested they had, how could anybody argue that this was incorrect? A lot of people have said that Encrochat was a breach of human rights and that they stole data from phones and also shared it between governments in different countries, which was also a breach of certain rights. In this episode, we're going to discuss and react to the news of the NCA being in court and being accused of deliberately concealing information in relation to how they obtained the warrants to be able to make the arrests in the UK. Thank you to everybody that has sent me this story and also the Twitter users as well. I know that people believe that every single story we'll be aware of, but I really do need your help in order to be able to see what these cases are. This trial is taking place at the Investigatory Powers Tribunal. For the best chow chow and sausage dogs, don't forget to follow Daz_DB Bulldogs, a Leeds-based breeder. He's been in the industry for 7 years and makes sure that he breeds the best quality dogs to the highest standards. Operation Venetic was the operation that the police used, the NCA, National Crime Agency, in order to arrest over 1,500 people and seize 115 firearms and £54 million in cash back in 2020 when they first did the Encrochat raids. It's been widely agreed that the French police were the ones that originally hacked Encrochat, and they were monitoring the messages that were sent between drug dealers and also hitmen in order to be able to seize drugs and also guns. The first major dispute between whether Encrochat was legitimate was the fact that they said that these messages were intercepted live, and in the UK you can't intercept messages. For example, in a phone conversation, if you're having the conversation in real time, but you can extract messages from the phone, and this was what the NCA were trying to prove, is that they didn't intercept the messages, they extracted them directly from the servers that were operating Encrochat. It has now been revealed in court that lawyers representing defendants said that the NCA didn't give the independent judge, known as a judicial commissioner, who authorised the surveillance warrant, a full explanation on the basis of its understanding of how the French hacking operation worked. Matthew Ryder KC told the court that the NCA decided that it wanted a targeted equipment interference warrant, the only warrant that would allow messages and images intercepted from Encrochat to be used as evidence in court. An analysis of the Investigatory Powers Act showed that the correct warrant for the Encrochat operation would have been a targeted intercept, known as a TI warrant, which would not allow them to use the messages as evidence. The NCA started with the result they wanted and tried to fit it into the Investigatory Powers Act, the lawyers have said in court. They wanted the first warrant, the TEI warrant, and nothing else. The motive was understandable. They wanted to make sure that they could use this evidence in court. The lawyers go on to say that the NCA made serious and fundamental errors by basing its warrant application on a position that was tenuous at best. The determination by the National Crime Agency to see it as targeted equipment interference and not targeted intercept led to willful blindness by officers at the very least, and it was wholly inadequate analysis of the information that needed to be put before the judicial commissioners. It then goes on to discuss the warrant and what it was based on. They said the application was based on a conversation between an NCA intelligence officer called Emma Sweeting and Jeremy Dicoux, who is from the French Cyber Centre, which is known as C3N, and we have discussed this on the channel before, and this is what I'm on about by making sure that you clarify every single side of the argument. We've also discovered a lot of appeals that have taken place in French courts. The lawyers have gone on to tell the court that the NCA deliberately concealed the information on a tenuous basis for the warrant application from the judicial commissioner who authorised the warrant. It is one thing for the NCA to proceed on tenuous information. It is another to not tell the judicial commissioner, the lawyer called Ryder said in court. They deliberately did not take steps to resolve the tenuous nature of that information, and this was a deliberate decision and a serious error. Other information that has been revealed in court is a meeting that was done between Europol, This involved a former NCA technical officer called Luke Shrimpton, 3 other NCA officers, 2 or 3 Scottish police officers, and a man from an unidentified agency. They believe they met with French or Dutch law enforcement, and this was at a Europol meeting dated from the 19th to the 21st of February 2020. During a cross-examination of Shrimpton, Defence Barrister Simon Soka KC agreed that during the meeting he had not been given a precise understanding of how the implant was going to work. The court heard that Shrimpton had written what looks like an intercept in his notes from the meeting. He also wrote a note asking whether the database dumps were also intercepts. There was no discussion at this Europol meeting that the Encrochat operation was in 2 different stages. The technique ultimately used in the operation against Encrochat is what the court heard. Shrimpton agreed that the Dutch had a greater pedigree at decryption, but could not say whether the implant had been designed by the French or Dutch police. The court heard that during Shrimpton's cross-examination that the NCA had not taken steps to analyse the French implant that was worked by allowing one of its Encrochat handsets to become infected by the implant. Soka said, putting what happened at the Interpol meeting between the 19th and 21st of January at its highest, it must have been apparent that there was capacity to get greater detail by allowing one of the devices to become infected. In further revelations in court, it has been said that the NCA developed its own Encrochat implant. Shrimpton agreed that the NCA developed its own implant to intercept data from Encrochat before the French police infiltrated the encrypted phone network. He said during cross-examination he had access to images of Encrochat servers towards the end of 2018 and they had not been supplied to the NCA by the French police. Shrimpton would not reveal who gave him this information, and he said the issue was really sensitive. And that is very interesting because, as they said earlier on in the article, they could only apply for a certain warrant depending on the type of hacking that was going on. And if they say the NCA had access to their own implant in 2018, this was a long time before the French police were working alongside them, and it would also affect the way that the UK court systems operated. They also referenced an email that was shown in court, and it was from Shrimpton, and he wrote to an NCA technical officer called Greg Elliott in January 2020, reporting that the French were planning significant activity on Encrochat. Shrimpton wrote that he suspected the French implant would exploit a security vulnerability and would be deployed to handsets through an update server. This is otherwise known as a zero-day error. He suspected the French would intercept messages from the server and decrypt them. The email said that the NCA developed its own implant, which Shrimpton was considering redesigning to make it less persistent. The NCA's version of the implant was designed to just get into the phone's database, get the encryption key, tidy itself up and remove itself from the device. The note also specified that Shrimpton wanted to ensure the NCA didn't have any implant running on a device when the French targeted it. And this is really interesting because, of course, the way the law works in France and the UK is very different. The defence lawyer Soka said in court that there was a vulnerability with Encrochat that used the signal protocol. This was a random number generator used for encryption, but it could also be replaced by an attacker. Shrimpton said that he wasn't thinking of that particular vulnerability, but agreed that it was a known vulnerability. Under questioning, Shrimpton agreed that he did not disclose the information at an earlier legal hearing, and he said that he had missed it. Shrimpton confirmed they was able to set up an emulation of the Encrochat system using Encrochat phones brought by the NCA in 2018. The NCA obtained a TLS encryption key, which was needed to spoof the Encrochat server in 2018, and a second key from the French in 2020 to carry out forensic analysis on Encrochat phones. The court heard the NCA was arguing that information that was transmitted and stored at the same time because of the intercept was ephemeral storage. The defence solicitors told the court that if it was the case, the implications were enormous, and this would destroy the principle and understood line between what requires a TEI warrant and what requires a TI warrant. It does not mean a handset, the lawyer goes on to say. It means any physical device, its server, its loader balance, anything that a communication touches for a picosecond is a stored communication, he said. Reports by the surveillance watchdog told the Powers Commissionary Office and suggested that the NCA was the largest applicants for TI warrants. So this is some of the information that has been revealed in the most secret court in the country, the Investigatory Powers Tribunal. The NCA have faced a lot of criticism over the way that they've used Encrochat to convict a lot of different people, and protests have taken place outside courtrooms where families of people that have been convicted are trying to fight for a retrial or some of the evidence to be thrown out. I know some people believe that covering Encrochat was not constructive and not helpful for the case of the mistakes that have been made and some of the errors and in some ways corruption that potentially could have happened. So really appreciate you joining me, and please don't forget to send your stories to news@scarcitystudios.com. I'll be back again with some news very shortly, and don't forget to check out the Encrochat playlist that is available on the YouTube channel.